Today we want to look at the structure of a software development life cycle. So the reason why I want to look detailedly the structure of a software development life cycle is because you are, Jebra, you are currently taking an Agile course, right? An Agile software development model. So with an Agile software development model, you will want to know the structure of the software development lifecycle. So, and before we actually dive deep into the software development lifecycle, you want to look at the entire structure of an agile software development model, how the entire program looks like. So, I know my screen is a little bit uh, maybe smaller. Can you see my screen, Jay Bright?
Yeah, I can see a screen a little smaller.
All right, I'm going to increase the size of my screen. I guess you can
Okay.
see it's brighter now, right?
Yeah, brighter.
Okay. So this is a course that actually the program and the structure of the program that actually have some scratch. So with an agile software development lifecycle, you can say an agile, you can maybe any of the model, any of the framework that you want to study. It can be agile Scrum, it can be maybe agile Lean, agile Kanban, but this one is a well-designed course for agile Scrum course that I've built. This is the entire program, how the entire structure looks like. So if you want to go through that program for an Agile Scrum Master program, you want to begin by maybe understanding how the entire software development lifecycle works. So with software development lifecycle, you're going to have like some basic introduction and understanding types of software development lifecycle. So you'll be looking into the waterfall model, you look at the agile model, and under the agile model, you're going to look at the frameworks. Then we're going to discuss a little bit about the lean model and maybe just a little brief about DevOps model. So these are currently the most of the widely used models that the organizations are currently using today. If I'm too fast, please let me know so that I can slow down a little bit.
No, it's okay. Proceed, sir.
All right. So, Jebrai, this is what the structure, if you want to go through the entire Scrum Master course, is going to look like. So, after you've gone through the introduction to the software development lifecycle, the waterfall model, the agile model, then maybe you can have maybe some brief explanation around the lean model. All right, lean is also like part of the agile model, but it has just a slight difference between the agile model and and there's just a slight difference between the lean model and the agile model. Then you're going to see like actually a deeper look into the agile model. Then you have what they call the agile manifesto. Sorry. Then you're going to have uh, agile principles. Then from there you can have other things like all the agile frameworks. So under the agile principles, you're going to see the agile frameworks, and after that, one of the frameworks is going to be Scrum. And under Scrum, you're going to look at the definition of Scrum and the reason why organizations are using Scrum. You're going to look at Scrum rules, look at values, pillars, artifacts, ceremonies, and events. Then you can also have other things, understanding the backlog refinement, backlog grooming. You can have what is a user story, then writing the user story, how to understand how to write a user story. Then you also need to know how to uh, prioritize your product backlog using the different models, the Moscow technique, or the ranking, the Kano model, how to prioritize your product backlog. And you can also understand some of the models or the techniques that software development teams are using to slice user stories. And when you understand how software teams or agile teams are able to slice user stories, then other techniques will include the horizontal model, the vertical model, the spider model, how to slice user story using these interesting models. Then there are also things like know how you're doing your story pointing, which sometimes it depends whether you want to use the T-shape sizing or you want to use story points, how to point a user story, sorry. So then, and you want to choose whether you want to use story points or T-shape sizing or any uh, other way that you want to point your user stories. Then with story pointing, you want to look at four things. Look at the complexity, familiarity or unfamiliarity, whatever. Then the risk involved, dependencies. Then you are also going to look at things like what? Like the acceptance criteria that are related to user story. These are very important things that you need to know. And you also, with acceptance criteria, you are also supposed to look into, yep, I think that one will come later, acceptance criteria. Then when you look at acceptance criteria, then you also want to look into deeply what they call the sprint planning. Then before you look at what is a sprint planning, you also you need to know what is a sprint, right? Under sprint planning, you need to understand what is a
Yeah.
sprint, which is a container that contains all the events. So we need to know what is a sprint in Agile. So when you look at understand what a sprint is, you want to look at the capacity planning of a sprint. Then you want to also look at the team velocity, which are things that you want to consider when doing your capacity planning. Then other things you need to understand commitment, what you consider before you do your commitment for sprint, the number of work, amount of work that you're going to commit in that particular sprint planning. Then other things comes in like you need to understand the goal of a sprint, which is typically to look at what they're going to be working on, why are they working on, the value they want to deliver in that particular sprint. Then the how is something that is usually answered by the dev team, the developers, or the dev team members. So, and you look at the sprint backlog, you want to understand what is a sprint backlog, understand what is the definition of done. And on that definition of done, I mean, you need to understand the definition of done. But before you look at the definition of done, it's better to understand what is the definition of done. What if the definition of ready? Yep, the definition of ready, then before the definition of done, which is great. And under the definition of ready, you need to understand what they call what is an inverse criteria, right? What they call the inverse criteria. Let me do this inverse, the inverse criteria. The inverse criteria. Good. You look detailedly the inverse criteria because that is one of the things that you need to have an understanding about it because it also helps you to have a deeper understanding of the definition already. That's what some teams are really suffering to be able to understand the concept of the definition already. Then after that, you need to understand the definition of done of some items. Then maybe after the sprint planning, they will now have to look into the sprint goal, right? The sprint goal and some of the things like task, you need to understand what that task mean, but it's not something that you look into when you are doing sprint planning. This is for the purpose of learning so that you understand why developers are having things like task, right? Then
Yeah.
right after that, there are things that will coming up like daily Scrum or call daily stand-ups. So, but typically it's more of daily Scrum. But I see many teams that still call it daily stand-up, which is okay. It's okay. And you can see other things like the Scrum metrics. So matrices in Scrum, you'll be talking about the Scrum board. You talk about the burn down chart. You talk about the velocity chart as well. You talk about the uh, the flow diagram, right? The flow diagram. So let me say the cumulative flow diagram. Sorry, the cumulative flow diagram. And you want to talk about the backlog health. Those are some of the things that you're going to see. So this is what the burn down chart, the Scrum board, the burn down chart. Then you can also have things like um, the cumulative flow diagrams, cumulative flow diagram. Then you can also have things like velocity chart. You have things like velocity chart, and you also look into other things like the sprint review or call it a sprint demo. So you're going to understand what the sprint review, and you look at what was planned and how the work went, the challenges. You discuss all of that, and maybe some spillovers, and maybe then take suggestion questions from stakeholders during this event. And then you're going to learn about retrospective. What is retrospective in Scrum, right? So, which is a general overview of how the sprint went, maybe some of the things that they want to continue to do, or some of the things that they want to stop doing, and strategies for improvement in the upcoming sprints. Then you need to also learn practical tools that you need to be using when you're talking about Scrum and all of that. So some interesting tools out there today is Jira, which is the most widely used by, I would say, 80 or 70% of the organizations out there. Then other tools include Azure DevOps, as well as uh, Trello, Monday.com, Asana, Rake, and all of that. So these are tools that they use in doing what they use in planning, tracking, and the releases of the different software. Then there are other things like the Spring capacity planning, which you use maybe Microsoft Excel sheet to plan that. But uh, Jira and Azure DevOps, those tools they've tried to integrate uh, the capacity for that particular sprint planning into those tools. So we're going to see more about that, and you're going to see some way how they do documentation, where in organizations that are using Jira, they will use documentation like Confluence to do the documentation for their work, documentation and collaboration. And in Azure DevOps, they will use things like the wiki to do their documentation and collaboration. Then you are going to look at other things like the calendaring tool. So the Google Calendar, Outlook, Calendly, and you are also going to look at other interesting tools like Microsoft Teams, right? So which are conferencing tools. You can use Microsoft Teams for conferencing. You can also, we're going to look at other things like WebEx by Cisco. You look into Zoom, you look into Google Meet, you look into GoToMeeting, and those are interesting meeting tools right out there. Under calendaring as well, you can use Team for conferencing and also for calendaring, right? Good. And under retrospective tools, interesting. Interestingly, there are other tools like IdeaBoard, Jamboard, Miro, Flatfrog, and Google Jamboard that you can use for your retrospective. But other interesting tools like app diagram that we're going to see, which is one of the tools that I'll be using today, app diagram. And there are other interesting tools like I would say even Microsoft Teams. They also have the whiteboard that they've integrated in the Teams right now that you can also use it for your retrospective. And there is also this software tool called Canva. Canva has some interesting design for your retrospective tools that you can use and retrospective models. Azure DevOps is doing a great job. I love Azure DevOps. They have an interesting tool that they have designed for. They've wire retrospective tool inside the. You can wire it like an external wiring from the Microsoft Marketplace or Azure DevOps Marketplace. You can wire your retrospective directly from there, and also other tools like estimation that you can wire from there. So those are interesting things about Azure DevOps. So this is the brief rundown of some of the things that you really want to look deeper into when you're doing uh, Agile Scrum studies. So, but today we are going to focus on the software development lifecycle. All right. Do you have any question,
Okay.
Bright?
Um, not at the moment, sir.
All right. So, so we are going to begin, and we will be looking at software development lifecycle. All right. So, and I would say when an organization want to maybe build a software, right? When an organization
Yeah.
want to build a software, so they will do. Let me do this. If they want to build a software application, it could be a web-based application or an Android application. Right? It depends. So typically they'll have, let's say, this is a software application that they want to build. And so let me see this. Let me increase the size of this. So usually when an organization want to build a software application, so they will. So you have maybe a client and a vendor, right? So I want to use a typical example like maybe let's use maybe Facebook, okay? Facebook.
Yeah.
So when Facebook wanted to build, let's say if Facebook want to build, let me see this. I want to duplicate this. I want to copy this, and then I should be able to paste this. Paste here, good. So let's say Facebook want to build a social media platform to connect the whole world, right?
Hmm.
They want to build a social media platform to connect the whole world. And so Facebook is a client, and you can have an organization. I would say Silvertech. You can have an organization called Silvertech Space, Silvertech Space. So they will reach out to Silvertech Space and say, hey, Silvertech Space, please, we understand you have been into projects, you are good at building software development projects. So we have this interesting business requirement that we want to build. And what we want to build is a social media platform. on to connect the whole, right? So that is a bigger view of the overall view of the project.
Yeah.
So what they will do is they will be after they will meet Tiva Tech Space. So Tiva Tech Space will have their representatives. Let's see. Let me see this agent. Okay. So Siva Tech Space will bring their representatives. These are actors that will bring. Siva Tech Space may sit down with Facebook, with representative from Facebook, and they will discuss what is going to be the things that they will need to be able to develop this interesting application. You may have a couple of representatives from Facebook and a couple of representatives from Silver Tech Space, whatever number you may want to think of. All right. So they'll have a meeting, and in that meeting, they will be discussing uh, requirements. Right. They'll be discussing requirements. So they'll do what are the specific requirements that they will need for this software, which is what some organization call requirement gathering. They will discuss requirement gathering, or call it requirement gathering and analysis. They want to see the requirement that they're going to need. So they'll discuss requirement in this meeting. Sorry, let me reduce the size of this. So in this requirement gathering, they're going to be discussing the kind of software tools that they're going to need. Maybe the tool they'll be discussing, the maybe the cloud provider that they want to use, right? So they may want to use a particular cloud provider, which is maybe, let's take for instance, Azure cloud provider, whatever, right? Um, they may want to use maybe Azure cloud, or they may want to use AWS cloud. It depends, right? All of this is just, I'm just making it for you to understand, right? So they may want to use Azure or AWS, or they may want to use GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, right? So
Yeah.
GCP. So they may want to use Google Cloud. So let me see which of this one. Okay, yep, right. So they may want to use any of these guys for their cloud, for that particular project. And they'll be discussing what is going to be the programming language, right? They want to use. It could be maybe they want to use uh, React maybe for the front end of the application, or maybe they want to use Node.js for the back end of the application, and all of that. So they will discuss the programming language, and they'll also discuss uh, maybe what is going to be the quality of the application and all of that. So they'll discuss all of this. So right after this requirement gathering, they'll discuss all these requirements. Maybe it depends on the model that they want to use. They may want to use a waterfall model or maybe agile model. So they will choose the model they want to use, right? The software development model they want to use. And after that, there is also what they call the system design. So they will now, after they've discussed the requirement gathering, there's also what they call the system design meeting. I mean, not maybe not a meeting. I mean, the next phase, the next things that I want to consider. So they will discuss system design. So what architectural design is the application going to look like, right? They'll discuss all of that. They'll discuss all the system design. And after discussing this system design, then there are things to also consider, like maybe they want to also discuss other things under the system, I mean, under the system design, which is the next stage, right? Let me copy this and then I paste it right here. There's going to be a system design, which is usually discussed by system architects, right? System architects,
Mhm.
solutions architect, they will discuss how the system design is going to look like. So have the system design. And after that, they are also supposed to look into things like the building, like the development, right? So they are going to discuss things like the developers, the development of the application, the system design, the system designers will sit and discuss this. Let me expand this a little bit. Yeah, so let me expand that. All right, these are system designers that they will sit and then they will design this application. Sorry, just messing this up. System designers, they will sit and discuss, work on the how the system is going to look like and things like that. They need to look at things like that. Then they also look at things like the building, right? The building of the application. So which is done by the developers. So the developers are going to sit down and build the application. So you are going to have let me see this. Let me see. So we're going to have the developers that are going to sit down and following the different designs that they think that the work is going to have. Following that, they are going to build the application, right? They are going to sit down, start building that, and start building the application. So developers, they sorry. So the developers are going to sit down and start building the application. This is how. Let me do this. Okay, I could take this off, and I could delete, and I could delete this. Perfect. So, which is called the build. You can say the next thing they will do, they'll start building the application. Build or development. Call it development. Development. That's it. So this is a development phase of the application. So you have many developers building the application here, you know, and so you're going to have like a whole team, right, building the application, a whole group of developers. So they will be building the application using the programming language and all that, using some other interesting tools that they're using, whatever. It could be tools, maybe the GitHub they're using for version control. They could be using maybe, I mean, they are Git for version control, GitHub for source code management, using maybe whatever. It could be maybe it depends on whatever model and whatever tools that they're using, right? So they're going to build the
Yeah.
codes. So let me see this. Just 1 second. Let me see this. So typically they'll do the coding of the application. They'll do the coding of the application. No, this is not what I wanted. Let me do this. So they are going to build all the codes, right? Whatever codes, right? They'll build all the codes. So they'll build all the source code, all the files, and I mean, build all the applications, the source codes, and all of that, right? So when they finish building these applications, these are developers, like I said. Copy and I'll paste this here and I will, it's being built by the developers. So you may have, uh, I don't know, I'm not, I don't like this, right? These are a group of developers, right? All of that.
Yeah.
So after that, there's going to be testing, all right? There will be testing of the application, which is another step, right? Which is another step for the application. There is going to be testing. So after they've built, they're going to do the testing of the application. Sorry, I have this, which is what they call QA. You can also hear things like QA. I'll see QA. So it goes through testing. And these testing are done by testers, QA guys. The QA guys will be there testing the application, right? They're going to test what? They'll test the codes that have been built, right? They'll test these codes that the guys have built. Because these guys build this code and push it forward for the QA guys to do the testing of the application that they have built.
A moment, sir.
Yeah.
So the QA guys are same as developers or they're out of the developer unit.
So all that's a good question, right? So the developers plus the QA guys, they are all in a team, all right? They are all in a team, but a QA, someone who is doing QA, some developers may know how to test, right? Some of the developers may
Yep.
know how to test, but when but they are designated QA guys in that team that knows that their job is just to test.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of the developers may know how to test, which sometimes they will do the testing in their local environment when they build that when they are where they are building the application. But there are there are some of the applications that the developers are not testing in their local environment, so they have to build it. When they finish, then the QA guys will pick it up and
Okay.
start testing it. All right, that's a nice question. So let me do this. Paste this here. So these are a group of QA guys. So when you hear the QA, so these are a group that let me say in a particular group in a particular team. So you could have some developers among these developers building just the front end of the application, while some are building the back end of the application. And so, or maybe some of them are what they call full stack developers, who which are guys that they are good at building both the front end and the back end of the application, right? So in most
Okay.
places, I haven't seen a lot of full stack developers who are good at building both the front end and the back end of the application, right?
Yeah.
So so now I remember I was citing an example of Facebook, right? So we
Yeah.
are going to see many other things about it when we go deeper into this. So remember today we are looking at the entire structure of a software development lifecycle, right? So
Yeah.
after the QA guys test these codes, these are the codes. So I can I can just pull them from here. The code that the guys have built, so they can test these codes. They will test these codes. Remember, these codes are is a code that the developers have built, right? So the QA guys are testing the codes. So it's the same code that I'm just pulling it right here. The same code. So these guys, they'll test this code. If the code is good, then the guys will push it forward. All right. They'll push it forward. What they'll do with the code, they can stage the codes or they can deploy the code. Right. They can stage the code or they can deploy the code.
Please, what do you mean by staging and deploying, sir?
Good. So staging means that they can keep the code maybe in a what they call the staging environment where the code will be there for a while, then before they will deploy the code later. Okay. So staging
Okay.
means that they will simply keep the code for a while and build other functionality, build other features of the application and add it to what was initially built, right?
Okay.
And add it to
All right.
what was initially built before pushing it for deployment. So, but um, you can also have, so this is testing by the QA guys. Just a second. I want to make sure I get this in color. So you can see this is a system design built up by system designers. Requirement gathering is a discussion by stakeholders, right? Stakeholders between the client and the vendor, right?
Yeah.
And the vendor or the contractor. So these are stakeholders from Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
This let me make sure I have this in place so that you understand what we're doing. I want you to understand what we're doing, right? So these are stakeholders. This is what they call stakeholders from Facebook. Just a second. Just trying to type this out. So yeah, good. So you have stakeholders from Facebook, right? And vendors or contractors. Bold this up and I can increase the size of this. So stakeholders from Facebook, they are the one to discuss this structure. Then you also have vendors or contractors. These are the guys, the vendors or the contractors from Silver Tech Space. Call it, you hear of vendors or you hear of contractors or contractors. The contractors are from Silver Tech Space. Silver Tech Space. STS. These are contractors from Silver Tech Space. All right. So after they've discussed the requirement gathering, then the system designers or system architects, they will sit and then they will discuss about this, how the system is going to look like. Even business analysts, all right? So this can be system designers or business analysts. Call it anyhow you want to call it. Um, call it uh, the business analysts, the BAs, and you can also have the system analysts, the SA. The system analysts. All right. So you can also have the system analysts, the business analysts. They will sit down and discuss how this is going to look like, right? So
Yep.
the system analysts, they could be maybe some from Facebook or whatever, but it could be all from they could all be from where? From Silver Tech Space, right?
Yep.
They
Yeah.
could be, but remember when they discuss why they are doing the system design, they also discussing with Facebook with the stakeholders, right? The client.
Yeah. I think here,
Sure.
uh, does the clients and the vendor, does for instance Facebook is the client, maybe discussing with Silvertech, they come with also their engineer, maybe to really get what they want from Silvertech, because only the stakeholder that knows nothing about what they want will not be really maybe to grab what the vendor might be
Yeah,
discussing with them. Is that
when I talk about stakeholders here, they include engineers from Facebook, right?
okay?
Yeah,
All right, all
whatever.
right,
Or
okay,
consider that they didn't have technical engineers. They can still do that without having technical engineers. But
okay,
yeah, but if they have technical engineers that they want them, the guys to look into the work, they will to look into the discussions. They can also include them in the conversation. So stakeholders include all of those guys. All
all
right.
right,
Yep. So these are the QA guys. These are they are the one who sits and discuss about how to do the testing of the application. Then the next phase of the application is gonna be uh, uh, what they call deployment. You're gonna have the deployment stage. Copy this, or I copy this, copy, and I paste this here. Shit, sorry. Shit. Yeah. So they're going to go into the next stage, which is what they call the deployment. So this is the deployment phase. With the deployment, they're deploying it to production. All right, they'll do deployment of the application. So with the deployment, Copy this. Just 1 second. Do this. Give me 1 second, please.
All
So,
right.
so, so when you get to the deployment process, right? So
Yeah.
in the deployment process means releasing the software updates, or maybe, I mean, if it is for the first time, right? So they're releasing the software to users. All right, that's what they
Mhm.
do. That's the what the phase. That's what it involves, right? So it involves
Yeah.
transferring the software from the development environment, right, to the production environment,
Yeah.
and that is in that development environment. It means that they want to send it to end users, the end users of the application. So that is what the deployment is all about, right?
Yeah.
So, and that is, so when this application has been deployed, or call it go live and all of that, so it means that I'm releasing this application to end users. So sometimes that's why you be able to see the application in the App Store, right?
Okay.
So you'll see how the users, I'll say end users, there are other interesting things that I'm going to bring up. I will show you. So let's say you have users of the software. They will now Users will now be happy to receive the application to start using it, right? You have interesting user. Happy users are happy, will be happy to when the application is deployed to production and they releases it to end users. You are now able to go to Play Store and access the application from Play Store, right? So these are users. Let me copy this, and this is very important. These guys are very important in everything that they are doing. They've been doing. These are very important guys. The most important guys, end users. And remember, the end users can still be stakeholders, right? The stakeholders
Yeah.
from Facebook, that can still be the end users. So
I think that the very first user.
yeah, they're also users, right? So these are the end users of the application. I mean, for Facebook, no, they you have end users can still be what, maybe normal like customers out there that will be accessing the application. They can also have
Yeah.
the stakeholders from Facebook that will also be accessing the application. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So that is it. So then after that, what is the last stage? The last stage you're going to have is what they call the maintenance or enhancement of the application. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this here. Maintenance or enhancement phase of the application, of the cycle of the software development life cycle. So you have enhancement or maintenance. So let's say they will be able to maintain the application. Maintenance or enhancement, right? So in this case, you have maybe, you know, nothing is never going to be 100%. You can have an application that has been built up, and so these guys, they need to use it, and maybe when they start using it, something breaks, right? or they want to
Yeah.
have, yeah, so that would be like they'll have to maintain what has been broken. And also you have things that like maybe users start using the applications and they start requesting for new features of the application. So when they start requesting for new features of the application, that's where you start seeing what they call enhancement, right? So that those are just the two things that you need to understand. So you have enhancement, like the fixing something or adding new features. So let me see this. So we can have this fixes, right? Anything that is not working right, anything that is not working right, doing some fixes on it or adding new features, right? Adding new features. So we are still going to access this. I wish I was using Canva. If we're using Canva, I would want you to really see, picture this, how this is going live. But it's pretty good, right? So, but you are going to, we're going to see many things about this. So we're adding new features on the application, adding new functionalities, maybe something that the customer want to see more, they'll be trying to add those new features. That's what is happening in the enhancement phase. So this is the life cycle of software development. So it starts from requirement gathering, goes to system design, go to the build phase, which is the development phase, and it goes to the testing, it goes to deployment, and you can also see enhancement, right? So after,
Yep.
yeah, after these guys test, they can immediately do deployment, as well as they can stage it a little bit in the staging environment before they deploy it. So, but you need to understand that when it goes from testing, whether it was staged or or whether it was immediately deployed, but the end result of it is that it's going to be deployed. The application is going to be deployed to end users, right? To be deployed.
Yep.
And obviously they will start doing enhancement and all of that. So this is the life cycle of software development. Now, interestingly, remember when we were discussing that, okay, during the requirement gathering, they are going to choose the software development model that they're going to use. Okay,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
different type of models that they're going to use. It could be the waterfall model, it could be the agile model that they're going to discuss, or whatever. So, but any of the model that they choose that they want to use, they are going to follow this, right? They're going to follow these steps. So
Yeah.
we will end here for today, and in the next uh, phase, um, the next in our next session, we are going to look at the different models. And one of the first model that we are going to be looking into is going to be the waterfall model of software development
Okay.
lifecycle. So
Okay.
yeah, so uh, feel free to post any question that you have, or maybe anytime. Do you have any question before we end this session?
I think everything is is comprehensive and
The
uh,
explanation is clear. Is that it?
yeah, yeah. The
Okay.
method is cool,
Yep. So
and
we'll
I
end here
think
for
if I
today. We'll go one bit at a time,
yeah,
right?
okay,
Yeah, if
that's
you have any
nice.
question, reach out. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
Yep. Talk to you.